Welcome to the Classroom Narratives Healing and Education podcast, the space where education meets resilience. I'm Dr. Joey Weisler, and in each episode, we dive deep into the personal stories of educators, students, leaders, and frontline advocates who are navigating the complexities within modern education. Whether you're just starting your teaching journey or are a seasoned professional looking for inspiration, we'll explore how to foster meaningful change, prevent burnout, and build trauma-informed communities within our schools. Now, let's take a seat at the front of the classroom as we get started. Welcome to an exclusive segment here as part of the Classroom Narratives podcast. You are tuning in at this time to what will be a spread out series of voices right from the heart of the system itself, the students. I recently thought about my favorite text, The Help, where a protagonist works to expose the ills of a system, but in doing so, she must turn towards the very voices that are being suppressed and cause change to begin, one whisper at a time. In this segment, and others to match, I revisit not only the students who formed the heart of the education system, but the very same students who formed the heart to my why. All high school graduates and university students at the time of our recordings. These students will tap into their pasts with me as their teacher, some from their time in middle school. We'll reminisce and talk openly about what worked, what didn't work, and what calls to action we can give onto the system to ensure that every student is equipped for future success. Now, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back to the Classroom Narratives podcast, where today I'm speaking with Haylie, who is currently a Georgia Southern University social work and higher ed major. So this is a really special segment because Haylie was actually never my student. However, Haylie does come from my alma mater. Haylie is a Stedman Douglas High School graduate, and she is one of the first students that I had subbed for as a day-to-day substitute teacher around the city of Parkland when I was probably even younger than she is now, when she was in sixth grade. So this is such a special segment because Haylie is somebody who I'm able to speak to about just understanding how the system is working, but from that Parkland perspective. So Haylie, I'm so glad you're with us. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. Weisler.
So we met when you were in sixth grade. What year was that? Was that 16-17 or 17-18?
17-18, I think.
17-18.
Because
Okay.
I remember the school shooting was 18, and I was also in
Yes.
6th grade at the time. But the one thing that I directly remember you from is the Snoopy.
Love that. So let's think about just the way education has worked currently. So you are currently exiting your sophomore year, entering your junior year in social work. So I wanted to think about how did the system of education, as you've now had some time to reflect over the years, how have you found that the system itself, because we've also had some discussions about the system, right? And how you're now working to pursue sociology work as well, maybe even go back and work at universities and colleges after you graduate. How have you found that the system has actually worked to help you heal through trauma, via from events in 2018 in Parkland, via from things that happened in 2020 after COVID? And how did the system either help you or perpetrate that further? And what are some things that we can do better on our side as educators to make that experience better for students?
One thing that I think that has stayed the same throughout both high school and college is that we now, at my college, we offer free therapy sessions. So, from the Wellness Center to Douglas to the Wellness Center at Georgia Southern, they both have helped me tremendously by dealing through stressful times, dealing with finals, and help me understand what that life has become because people don't usually get that experience in high school. So I'm grateful that I had them both in high school and in college.
Definitely. I actually recently had my first conversation with Sandy Hook Elementary School teacher, Abby Clements. And Abby Clements, one of her best friends, is our very own Miss Sarah Lerner, our yearbook teacher at MSD. And what Miss Lerner emphasizes in some of her work as well is just really the lack of support offered throughout the district in the aftermath of our tragedy. But we all agree that the Eagles Haven Wellness Center has been such a wonderful resource if you're aware of some of their work as well. So then, what do you remember, if you're comfortable to talk about it, from that sixth grade year as a middle school student in the aftermath of that tragedy? Because we were on the same campus that day. and we were on the same campus that fall. And I remember being really profound, really tricky. Like, we had a hard time reading The Giver that year because my students were unsettled at the idea of our protagonist, Jonas, who's hearing gunshots for the first time. I had a specialist come to me in September, and she pulled me aside and she's like, "You cannot talk about 9/11. You just can't do that this year," because it was on September 12th, after I've been talking about it for the whole day before that, because students were so unsettled by witnessing historical community trauma. So, what was your experience like in middle school, sixth and seventh grade, in those 2 years? What did you notice about the work that your teachers were doing and what they were trying to preserve for you as a student?
Since I was so little at the time, they tried to preserve like the harder details for us to grasp. But then I think as I moved on in life, I learned the harder details later on. And then when I transitioned to high school, I was just like, so this is really it. And I just like, cause I remember in college when I worked in the history department, someone asked me, where did you go to high school? And then I said, Stoneman Douglas. And they're like, oh, wow, it's still open. I'm like, yeah. And then people just are confused that, like, are surprised I went there.
And so then, what would you say was like a takeaway or something that you learned during that time, especially in your seventh grade year, for example, and even eighth grade? Like, as the year started to fade and you're still working your way as a student in the system, what was that like? And what were some really helpful moments that you learned by being in a classroom with Parkland teachers that helped build you up as a student? And that's a tricky question because your eighth grade year, you never finished your eighth grade year in March
Oh, yeah,
2020.
we didn't. We
Mm,
had pandemic.
tricky, tricky, tricky. So then between those, especially that seventh grade year where you actually had a full year, what was that middle school period like in terms of ways that you felt you could have been strengthened just by being there in
Uh,
school?
I don't think anything strengthened me, but the main thing that got me through was having my friends and family on my side. And then I think the turning point of my seventh grade year was when, sadly, my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer, glioblastoma. And that was very hard for me because, and then I remember this girl I was talking to, she was she was very toxic at the time. And then she rather me hang out with her than hang out with my dad at the hospital. And she made me realize I need to get like better friends. And then that's how I've talked to my best friend Lauren all this time because her and I, like, we've talked ever since my dad got diagnosed, and she's been my safe person to talk to on everything.
Our condolences and thank you for sharing that with us. And for educators that got to know you throughout your middle school years, and again, I went from subbing you in sixth grade. By the time you reached seventh, I was running an only eighth grade class. You were not my student that year. After that, I didn't see you again until maybe your junior year in high school. So during that window of time, and we spoke about this as well in our pre-chat, when it came to just having a lifeline of teachers, what was it about those particular teachers that helped you make school feel welcome for you? What did teachers do to make you feel welcome at school?
One thing I think my favorite teacher, I think in all of high school, was Mr. Garner. Just him being kind, friendly, and being like respectful. Because certain teachers in my freshman year, they weren't that. I had a teacher and she made me feel unheard, and I told her about my family issues, and then she just passed it off and told me just go back in class, and she just made me feel unwelcome, unrespected in the classroom.
So then let's talk about teachers that made you feel seen and welcome. What did they do that was different than those teachers that made you feel unseen and unwelcome? How did you feel with teachers like creative writing versus those who were doing things that were different? And how did that help you become more accustomed to school?
So one thing specifically was the stream of consciousness in the beginning of class. She always did it, and then it helped me feel more relaxed at the beginning of class and made you always feel welcome. And you just writing down your feelings and like just having the calm music and the essential oils, I think that just helped everyone relax. And that's why she's so liked, because she does all the things for students that we wouldn't expect. Like, she made it a calm environment. She helped me relax and take a breather for my day. And I wasn't thinking of anything else, just how my day has been, and if it's been stressful or not, I could just write it all out and then I could feel better.
And I think one major point to emphasize is, again, how that is a class about language and expression. We certainly see a lot more writing classes enable students to go in that direction. So then let's think about work that you've been super proud of in school. Has there ever been, and you mentioned that you've been a part of some honor societies. I'd love to hear what those were again. And has there ever been a club or an endeavor or a project, or even like you mentioned with an award you got from TV in your senior year as well? What is something or a number of things that you're super proud of about your time in the system, in the K-12 system?
I think one thing that I always have, like from at least elementary school, I'll label one from each time. I remember in second grade, I was so proud of myself for being the only second grade student to say photosynthesis. And I was just so proud of myself that day that I got to say that word, and like I got to be the only one that pronounced it correctly.
Mhm.
And I was just so proud of myself. And then from middle school, I think my turning point was making my friend Lauren, like having her as my best friend forever, I would say, because
That's huge.
like she was the reason I got through, the reason I managed to get through all these steps, because she helped me with everything. And then in high school, I think joining the clubs and organizations I was a part of, such as a National Honor Society, making me feel like I was servicing something. And then from TV club, I was a sports editor, so that helped me out a lot. And then Journalism Honor Society, Astronomy Club, they all built me into different types of characters I would want to be. They all built me to be responsible, knowledgeable, and all those certain topics.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And then, if you could say something to yourself today, to your middle school or high school self, what would you want them to know now about how school and education would work and could work now that you are an adult, or rather somebody who's no longer a K to 12 student?
I think one thing I always want to tell myself is you'll be okay in the long run. It's a long run, like it's like a marathon. It'll take a while, but you can get through it. It's just mind boggling all the crazy things that have happened in my life. And my mom's like, "Are you sure you can process like grief and stuff?" I'm like, "Mom, I've been through grief. I understand it now better than I feel like I've most people my age, because I've been through the losses I've encountered, and they've only made me stronger."
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And you're also now working in social work as well in higher ed. What are some intentions? And I know every college student hates hearing, what are your plans? What are your plans? But I'm curious as well. What are some of your intentions of doing social work? And for our listeners who might be inspired high school students, what would you want them to know about what their futures could look like in college?
So one thing I think is keep your options open, because I've transitioned from I've had three majors in college, from history to communication studies to now sociology. I think I've learned that it all depends on what your mood is, and finding that person inside of you dependent is matter on how you feel about that certain subject. Because I originally wanted to become an archivist, but then I realized the reason I want to do geriatric social work specifically is that my grandma's my best friend, and she's just like, we talk every few days, and it makes me reignite my passion for it.
And that was Haylie talking to us from Georgia. And again, we wanted to use this platform to just send our appreciation to all of our educators out there who make their students feel seen. Thank you for joining us on the Classroom Narratives Healing and Education podcast. If today's episode inspired you or made you think differently, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment or review wherever you listen to podcasts, and stay connected with us on the @Classroom Narratives podcast over Instagram and Facebook. Remember, together we can transform our scars into stars in education, one conversation at a time.